It is 6:30, so let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Dr. Hanson will take roll call for us. So welcome to our Board Academy meeting on Monday, May 5th of 2025. I guess right away we can talk a little bit about May 5th to the 7th being Staff Appreciation Week.
Yes, Teacher Appreciation Week, you see it out on the calendars there, but we celebrate everyone here in the school district every year this time of the season. So hats off to Michelle and Jesse Bender for all the great treats this week. Really, really fun day. There's a popcorn theme, and so awesome. Not going to give away the other 4 days. They're very creative, so I want to thank you for that. But board, you play a huge role in making sure that this is a great place to work. So thank you for your work today. And all the board meetings you're at, and just being at our events and supporting our faculty in so many different ways. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I know it's always a fun week at the schools, so thank you for setting that up. All right, we'll go through these one at a time. I would look for a motion to approve the employee resignations that are embedded.
So moved.
By Teresa, do I got a second?
I'll second.
Sue, or is it? Sue, I'm sorry, I wasn't writing. All right, second by Sue. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, next would be a motion to approve the professional teacher contracts that were embedded.
Administration recommends approval.
So moved.
Motion by Teresa, second. Somebody?
I'll second.
Second by Rick. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Last one would be the athletic co-curricular instructional leadership hires that are embedded.
Administration recommends approval.
Motion for that.
So moved.
Motion by Teresa. I got a second. Second by Spencer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next we're going to move into a board review of the facilities planning and timelines from 2017 through 2025. You want to introduce a little? You want me to a little bit, or?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so this we've kind of been talking about this for a while. I've been talking with administration on this a little bit, and just kind of said it'd be good just to kind of go back and just give kind of a factual timeline. I'm going to call it day one from when we kind of started looking at facilities, even before any of us were on board. Mm-hmm. So there was, some things that were early on that some of us may either forgot or not known. Through this whole process, there's been a lot of misinformation out there, partial information, flat out lies, a lot of info out there that, I think assumptions, things like that. So I asked administration to put this through. I know Michelle did a lot of work with this. I think Joe worked with her maybe on it through the whole time. So it's a little bit long, but it's a lot of information. So kind of all the facts from, like I said, from day one. Anything else before you start? No?
I think that's good. And this is embedded for the board to look at also, or the public who can look at the dates. And then one thing that I found interesting that I then just put all of the public posted meetings since 2017 and talked about facility planning. Not this needs to be fixed, like we need to replace the carpet, those type of things, but every 55 meetings have been publicly posted since 2017 about the facilities as a whole in the district, which I kind of knew, but when I got it on paper, I was like, oh.
Why was there a gap between 21 and 23?
You're gonna learn that.
Okay.
Right. And so I know that this is small, but what this is, it's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it's a snippet in chronological order of all board facility meetings, all board academies, all community focus groups, all board retreats from 2017, December 2017 until present day. And I'm obviously not going to read every single thing, but if there's something particular about that meeting that you want to go and see the rest of the agenda, you just have to go into Neptune and find that meeting on that date, and then the minutes will be in there. So, like I said, this slide shows the start of facility planning discussions back in the district in 2017. In early 2018, the district partnered with HSR architects, and they conducted a facility study. So by the summer of 2018, they had contracted with HSR to complete that study. And it took a few months, which is normal. This company went through every building with the buildings and grounds. Joe, were you here at that time? Okay. So you've toured the buildings a lot. And did a very comprehensive assessment of all buildings. And that's why when we did our last one, we just focused on a few buildings rather than looking at LaGrange in total again. So they took about 8 months to go through each building, and then they did inspect all aspects of the building, space issues and mechanical type things to complete their study. Then the study was discussed at the board level at more than one meeting, and then it was decided that detailed review of each building needed to happen. So these reviews were planned at each building over the course of the next several months. So in 2020, January, they started with Miller Elementary School. They had a meeting, the whole board was there, obviously the community was invited to that. The principal was also there, any faculty that wanted to attend. And I just remember LaGrange's, and we literally went through every nook and cranny of the building when I was principal there. So during January and February, they reviewed Miller, Lemonwire, LaGrange, and Warrens. And then Wyville and Camp. Am I ahead of myself?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, now I'm learning something. Then in March, they reviewed Wyville and Camp Douglas, and then COVID happened about a week after the last tour. So another major thing for our district is that the district leadership changed at that time too.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a new superintendent that was coming into COVID. We all lived through that. Thank you, Dr. Jensen. And then the building reviews did start up again in September, and they went through Oakdale, Tomah Montessori, the high school, middle school, Robert Cooper, and all of those buildings were looked at in depth by the complete board. So then, this is just the overall schedule in 2020. There was a plan developed that involved a community, and much like the last study we had, they had a month by month, we're going to assess, we're going to have a community focus group, we're going to educate the community, and so on. So then in 2021, the district formed a community focus group. And that was formed with a variety of people that were connected to the district, like teachers, administrators, students, and board members, of course. But I found the actual other community members that were listed, and I just wanted to just say those out loud, because if you know any of these people, they did come from a very wide variety of background. There was Dwayne Chapman, Spencer Stevens, before you were on the board, Spencer, Craig Scott, Mark Pierce, Jeremy Hagelman, Greg Zingler, Deb Buswell, Joan Finger Lee, Terry Geruso, Kate Shanehoff, Cynthia Bergman, and then Cindy Zarby. And I believe that recommendations for this committee were taken from the board and from the community. I'm pretty sure. You could self-nominate yourself, or there was some recommendations from current board members. These people would be good for this committee. So these 24 people met 5 times from February to May of 2021. And they had a primary focus to review all information regarding the district's educational facility and financial needs. And their goal was then to make a recommendation to the Board of Education for the implementation of those needs. And also attended those meetings just as a principal, and they really went through a lot of exercises. The form that, or the outline that they used, it was not a sit and get, it was we toured this building, let's have a discussion, what are the shortfalls, and what needs to be addressed. And they had a roadmap developed, which included obviously the facility assessment and the formation of that community focus group. They looked at long and short-term goals. The roadmap also included engagement of the community through a survey, and also how we're going to educate everyone on the needs that we have. And as I was doing this, I was like, oh, that sounds very familiar. So I guess we can write that then too, and we follow that roadmap. So then the community focus group looked at the facility assessment report, and they, like I said, conducted more school visits. And as noted, the focus group looked at the following: how to accommodate the growing numbers in some of the buildings, educational adequacy, overall lifespan of facilities and building systems, modern education practices and spaces versus what they looked like when they were built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, site space recommendations, and I do remember the conversation when they talked about neighboring school districts and attracting students and staff. At that time, Sparta had just bought land and had just passed the capital referendum to build an elementary school. And that would have been their second new school in probably that 15 years span. I think Meadowview was maybe 8 years before that. Don't quote me on that exact date, but Meadowview Middle School was built first, and then they built the elementary. And then, of course, the committee was supposed to look at operational efficiencies. So the focus group looked at each level, and they came up with many of the same conclusions that we had come up with just recently too. But at the elementary level, priorities included the learning environment, inadequate space for our special needs enrollment, and common learning areas, limited storage space and space for staff to work, capacity issues at some of the buildings especially, site concerns, and then what really is the long-term plan for our Montessori program. They did the same exercise for the middle school, and at the middle school level, the priorities included the tech ed, ag, vocational education spaces, the limited space and access to the cafeteria area, classroom academic spaces that were designed 50, 60 years prior, site area constraints, the narrow hallways compared to the number of kids in them, the need for an additional multi-purpose or gym area, and just the overall learning environment in the classrooms that just aren't large enough for current educational practices. And then lastly, they did the same type of thing at the high school. At high school, priorities again included tech ed, ag, vocational CTE, failing consumer education spaces, music and band were an issue at that time also, gym needs to accommodate our needs, but also the community needs, and just the overall learning environment within the adequate learning spaces. So they came up with a master plan back in 2021, and the focus group concluded that they felt the number one issue was the middle school. That the middle school, they needed to have a long-term solution for the aging middle school building. They also then said, you know, the high school and elementary obviously have concerns also. So that committee came up in the end with basically 3 different options that they were presented here. The first one included a new middle school, and that would then just have some renovations at the high school along with some renovations at the middle, in middle school would be new, and then some renovations at elementary school. The second option was a new high school without new competition fields and renovation for middle school and elementary. And then the third option was a new high school with complete athletic fields and some renovations at the middle school and elementary school where they needed it. One of the recurring themes during this time frame, and I mean during our time frame too, was okay, if you're going to build a new high school with without competition, with where are you going to do that? And at the time, there were some maybe face-to-face discussions, but not a full force endeavor to what lands were available, like the comprehensive way that was done this time. We will get into that in a second. And I just had to throw this in here, being a money person a little bit. This was back in 2021, and just to note that the tax impact at that time on $100,000 property would average $215 for every $100,000 of property, and that was for $96 million. And obviously, for $177 million in November, that price would go up. But the projected price for this last November on $100,000 property was $257. So $257 to $215 in big, huge picture is not a huge amount of money. And really, what a lot of that is contributed to is that our district is so heavily aided right now compared to even what it was back then, that we get back 60 plus cents on the dollar for every dollar we spend. So you would expect when they went from 96 million to 177 million to be more than a $45 difference. But that explains it if you're ever asked that. Not that everybody will go back and look at that, but if you're ever asked. So then at the board level, back in 2021, the board continued discussions by engaging in a community service or community survey. Then in November, there was some discussion and some concern about, okay, we have a current operational referendum that's going to have to go back to operational referendum to the taxpayer without cutting, at least 1.1 or $1.5 million worth of programming in April of 23. So this was November of 21, so they had basically a year. And at that time, the focus group recommended to the Board of Education not to pursue a capital referendum because the upcoming operational referendum was too important. That we couldn't go and build something new and then cut $1.5 million per program. So the Board of Education had a board retreat where they thoroughly talked about all the options that had been provided to them, information, and then also the recommendations from that community focus group. And in December of 21, the Board of Education officially switched gears to the operational referendum until the April 23 vote took place. And then I think another significant thing in our district is for history. We lost a superintendent, changed 2 years prior. Now we lose the business manager. And just people changing is a big deal when we're talking about big projects like this. But we fast forward to 2023, when we did pass the operational referendum with the community in April 23. So then, I'm just a couple months in, and Dr. Hans is like, we gotta get back on that capital because we told the community we were going to. So in September of that year, the facilities committee interviewed 3 different architects to do a community survey again, and the information was passed on to the full board of which architect we selected or the committee selected, and that was great. We had worked with them. And then from that moment until November 24, there whether it was Joe taking them around to multi-sites for all-day visits, or showing them all the nooks and crannies of everything, or if it was just us, meeting in person or virtually to talk about the financial part of everything, really what are the needs. We ended up, I believe we had 7 options that core group had come up with before we presented to the board. We brought Kurt on board with our district around that time, and we also surveyed the staff, just said, be very candid, what does your space need, what do you need? And then all of that information was then shared with the Board of Education. So moving on to the end of 23 and then into 2024, the master plans and staff survey information were shared. I think this subject was on every board academy and probably board meeting and board facility. A community survey was conducted again, and then various options were presented to the Board of Education in 2024. And then as meetings continue with the Board of Education, the board did select option 2 to pursue for capital referendum, and that option included a new high school, renovating the current high school to make it a new middle school, renovating the current middle school for an elementary school, having some minor renovations at the Grange Elementary to provide adequate space for the Montessori school, and then the plan also included closing 5 district buildings. So over the course of the next few months, the Board of Education formulated the capital referendum question and held multiple community meetings to try and educate the community on the need and then the plan. So just community outreach, the quick fact card went to all households in the Tomah area school district. The direct mailer went to all households. Informational videos were made and then put out on Facebook, and I believe they're on our website. All information also from all of our meetings and everything was presented was put on the website. We had a dedicated email address that was just for referendum type things. And then obviously when it was posted on every board meeting, board academy, board facility meeting, those are posted and viewed by everybody. And then we had the 4 community meetings. So into when the capital referendum failed, unfortunately the needs for our students, staff, and physical buildings did not go away. Joe, on his own, created a document for the board to look at that gave our best estimate of here our 5-year and 10-year needs for every single one of our buildings. And I know that many of you have probably thanked Joe for that, and I have too. He doesn't like recognition, but he did all of that on his own without being directed to do it, but then also completed his normal job too. So one more thank you for that, Joe. And then Joe presented that information to the board in December at the Academy. At that time, it was agreed, so let's go through each building again. And let's have the principals come and go through each building again. So the board took the next 3 months to go over each building again, looking at the mechanics of each building, and then also got input from principals about the space and program needs for each building. So again, this would be January 25 through March of 25, and then we even heard from the bus garage, middle school and high school again in April. So that leads us to tonight in a very condensed version. And as you heard from all the information that had been presented here, the November 24 referendum was just not a fly by your seat of the pants decision. This has been in the planning since 2017. And I know Mr. Nico nicely alludes to the fact that so much misinformation out there that it's just, that has to be a message. This wasn't something that somebody really said, let's go and do this, and we took the message. And then everything that you just heard, the November 25 or 24 capital referendum was not a spearhead at any particular administration. It wasn't Dr. Hansen, it wasn't I, it wasn't Mr. Porter, it wasn't Mrs. Zardy. It was everybody saying there are needs here and we need to do something. So here we are. I know.
Initial questions or comments? Probably directed at Ms. Clark right away. For you?
Just one, I guess. And it's sad because could we have done things differently? Maybe, we can always go back in hindsight and think, maybe we should have done this, maybe we should have done that. It's hard to say. But the consensus out there in the general public school systems are getting hammered by the media, by politics, what have you. And I don't feel we fall in that category of a school board or a school district that's done anything irregular or wrong, but we're taking on that mud from everything else. So there's a contingency out there that's it's anti-school board, anti-school, and it isn't personal, it's just the mud that's being thrown around, and it's sticking to us, and it's gonna be hard to get rid of that. It's going to, in my opinion, it's going to be hard to get an operational referendum passed because people are just dug in. They don't get it. When is that anyway? 26?
We just finished our second year.
Okay.
Or we will be finishing our second year. So in 2 more springs.
2 more spins. Okay. Those
We're covered for 2 more school years.
Yeah. All right. Good.
Right, 2 budgets.
Yeah. But how all that misinformation and all those wrong numbers got out there, even published in letters to the editor of the paper, I called that guy. I don't know. I don't know how that happened. But they only have to read it one time and they believe it.
Anything else directly to Ms. Clark? Or Dr. Hansen or anybody?
Thank you for the journey. Continues to go.
You have a strategic plan laid out somewhere there, but it wasn't. I know that Joe has done a lot of work looking at all of the exact things that need to be done. Do you have it on a spreadsheet where it does a continuum over time, like from this period of time to this period, and then this building gets this from this time, and then this one goes to this, and so on and so forth? Do you have anything like that set up? Or can you take his figures and put it in that kind of mechanism so that we know how to budget with what little we have at the present time? So that we can do some of these things that need to be done, and so we can, so facilities doesn't go, I don't know what to do.
Facilities does have a 10-year plan that's required by statute.
Right.
And then we walked you through about another $90 million on top of that. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Clark.
I just need it probably in a
Yeah.
different format to be able to see it.
We don't have a piece of paper that's as long as this table to say, this, and this. And the current board administration has not worked on a strategic plan to update what's already there. So that's a future work that the board needs to do. Because again, a strategic plan is not one person or 2 people.
No.
It's the board and whoever the board invites to.
So you're talking about capital expenditure strategic plan on the capital side? Okay.
Yeah, because I think since I don't know, it's like 5, 7 years later, since you started this whole process and you're dealing with a new board, and a new, and a turnover in the community, somewhat, that maybe, trying to get fresh eyes looking at this and fresh ideas that might be helpful. Because I know that we need to do something. I know that there is a space constraint. We need to look at things probably outside the box at this point. Because passing, the notion I get from the public is passing a referendum of any sort is not going to happen on that chance. And especially with what Ms. Bloom has said, that all the mud is sticking and it's sticking hard. And so what can we do to make it until it stops sticking as hard and we can move forward? So we're going to end up with our galoshes on.
So facilities committee does a great job. Like I said, they've been working through a spreadsheet of these are things that are highlighted in certain years to get done. So that's always been in process, and that continues to grow. But absolutely now the strategic piece that you've seen in history over the last 4 years of the intense work. Now it's time to bridge forward. Absolutely. So
I don't know, studying again, we've already done it twice at great length, months of work there, both times, and we really come up with the same end result. So going back and doing that all over again seems rather pointless and a waste of time.
I think at this point, I agree with you 100%. I don't think it's worth bringing another or the same third-party person in to do this. I mean, Joel taking information from the previous two and giving it back to us again.
I don't think that's what she means.
No, that's not.
I
That's
don't
not
think
what
she's
I
talking
mean.
about
No.
starting over.
Oh,
I think
heavens
she's talking
no.
about, like, we did the facility study, we came up with the solution. The solution didn't work, so now we need to go back to the drawing board and come up with a new solution, not restart the whole.
Oh, no, I don't want to study. No.
That's what I understand.
Sorry, that's, I make sure I understood that right.
As a community, we gotta hope that people are listening to other schools that didn't get operational referendums passed. And what they're having to do is cut and cut and cut. So either we decide we want education to be number one, or, and you choose not to pass a referendum for operations, we're gonna have to do the same thing. I mean, the money isn't there. We don't have any hiding in the basement somewhere or whatever. I mean, we've got to figure out, baby steps. I don't know, but there are schools that are screaming for more room. There's, all of these things that we were hoping we were going to be able to fix, and there's no money if we don't get people to help us, fund it anymore. And so we can talk about it all we want, but I mean, we've got to get the people to understand that if we don't fund education, the communities probably aren't going to be hanging around.
Right.
They're going to be going somewhere that they do believe in education and those kind of things too. But that's just my belief.
So maybe to help restore public trust, like that foundational HSR report is not available online to the public. The link is broken on the district's website. It has been broken. It was cited multiple times, especially during the referendum process, but there was no link to actually look at that study. If you want people to support a multi-million-dollar investment in schools, giving them that information, especially if it's a public report, that was at one point released, available. And like I said, you click on the link, it says 404, error not found.
We own it anymore.
well, we have a brand new one, a new 300-page one provided by Bray and Market and Johnson. So
We should put that online, available to the public, and advertise to them that they are able to comb through and go through that.
We went through it in board meetings too, but yeah.
I'm just saying, in the sense of restoring public trust, giving them as much information as you possibly can, even if it's an overload of information, especially if it's stuff that you're citing on your referendum slides, it's kind of a critical document that should be available for everybody.
information overload is much better for the public at this point. I have to agree if we call it. That we needed more.
What did you need
they-
more of,
they-
Teresa?
At this point, I don't remember all the questions I had back then, but they weren't answered ever.
If you
And
asked.
so,
me,
and I had asked, they were asked in a meeting, because I went to the meetings, and, the questions weren't, to the satisfaction of the people asking, and I paid attention to
then
who was
you
asking
asked
and
me.
things. And so, I'm not gonna sit here and be beaten up about my opinion.
I'm just saying
but-
that every, to my knowledge, and I can only speak for myself, every question that was publicly asked at any meeting, or even if somebody calls me or you step in and see me, it's always been answered. So-
But what I'm saying is not to their satisfaction, and that is why the public voted the way they did. So somewhere there was something missed in the answers that were given, and it wasn't clear enough.
So here's what, can I jump in? Is that
Yes.
okay? So kind of just like combining both of your statements, I think from what I understand happened, and again, I didn't talk to everyone, so I don't know. But I think that there were not necessarily, maybe not even misinformation, but things were answered. Everyone has different learning styles, everyone understands things differently. So if something was told to someone and they understood it a certain way, then they go and tell their friend Johnny, and then Johnny goes and tells Susie, and then it keeps going. Then all of a sudden, it's out of control, right? I think going with Ms. Devine's point, if we had something where we could say, hey, if you go to the source, I tried doing that a few times, like saying like, because they would come up with some weird number, and I'd be like, well, actually, if you actually go to the meeting minutes right here, here's the actual information, not what Johnny told Susie, told John, told his dog, told his aunt, whatever. Like, this is actual information. So I think maybe that's kind of where this came, where like we couldn't say like, go to the source. Like, that's what I always tell people. Like, I don't care which way you vote, but have the right information from the source, not what so-and-so told so-and-so told so-and-so told so-and-so. Like, even if you completely disagree with my opinion, at least have the information from it. So does that kind of like sum up things? Like maybe it would be go read it for yourself instead of just listening to what everyone's saying.
Correct.
I don't know,
That is kind of, that, in essence, that's part of what I'm saying, yes.
Maybe that's where.
Can I piggyback off of that? Sure. So in the beginning, in your timeline that was presented, like after the HSR report in 2020, you had a large community presence where you had people going and touring the schools, the board, all that kind of stuff, right? Then we go to 2021, it slims down. We get to that 24-person focus group, and I understand that because they're looking to, bring something forward to the board, right? Then we had that drop off, change of leadership, operational referendum focus, I get that. 2023, all of a sudden, then it's just a small handful of, it sounded like mostly administrators, meeting with vendors who would stand to profit off of new construction instead of community engagement. Does that make sense? So by the time you're rolling out the referendum, instead of it feeling like a community engagement process, it felt more like a marketing ploy instead of like, this is what we came up with, this is what we're doing, here we go. Instead of that large community presence, instead of inviting people to go and tour the schools, because that would sell, right? Like, Michelle, you took me on that tour around the high school, and I even said to you, this was an eye-opener for me, because it really was. If you did that with community involvement and inviting people in, more easy to sell.
Just
we had for community meetings, and we probably took maybe 40 people on a tour.
I'm saying in the sense of when you're building up to this next referendum process, right, of the facilities, if that's the direction and what we want to do and all that kind of stuff, right, the strategic plan. Community engagement from the straight get-go will be so important to earn back public trust. You know, even if only 5 people show up, we have a camera person, we're showing it, we're putting it on, you know, like YouTube or whatever. So more people in the community can actually see what it looks like. Because people got scores, people work, everybody's got multiple jobs, hustles, all that kind of stuff, right? But it gives people their time, their access, they can go and do it, they can look at it Sunday morning while drinking coffee, you know, if they so want to. But that way you're having a whole trail from the beginning of going, no, we had this, here's the evidence, here's what's going on, and here, we're displaying it.
Well, I don't know if we'll be going back and doing a $171 million.
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying
We're gonna have
any
to do baby
plan
steps.
going forward.
We're gonna have to do baby steps.
And that was
Build as we go, because.
and that's what
Because of all the misinformation, everything that was out there, I think we've already tainted them. It doesn't matter when we come back and what we tell them, they're not gonna forget what they heard the first time around. So we're gonna have to regroup, you know, again, baby steps and.
So that's part of what tonight is. Tonight, I mean, we're kind of like, all right. That's why I talked to, you know, I said, let's go back, let's review everything. We got a new board. I mean, like I said, this began before any of us. You know, this began with other people, and that's I think that's what Ms. Clark was alluding to is this wasn't 4 of us or 6 of us or 7 of us or 8 of us or whatever. I mean, this has been 8 years. So we're just trying to go back and just make sure everybody knows what steps we went. I don't think we're going to decide. Well, I know we're not. We're not going to decide tonight where we go from here, but the conversation has to start. So that's what we need to figure out is if we come up with some kind of, I mean, we can start talking about it a little bit tonight. We can figure out, I don't know what, if we have recommendations of what to do in the next month to a couple months or whatever. I mean, that's where we're at.
I would like to see a strategic plan that you take one building and then all of it has to be done or whatever, and then you go out for referendum and then you have another and you layer them and so on and so forth. And that way you can do what you're saying, Mr. Murray, is doing baby steps because the taxes are out of control because the assessor has come and done a 23% increase on everybody in this community. And it doesn't even touch the city taxes or anything else. And so the city's having issues, the county's having issues, we're having issues on, you know, and we're needing those tax dollars to take care of these things. And I agree, we have to do something, but it's going to have to be in small things. And if we could lay it out in a very succinct manner for the community, I think they would be a lot more on board and having this roll from one thing to the next to the next.
But I don't know if it's gonna be economically feasible to take one building at a time and you have to bring them up to the new codes and things like that. When you're gonna have to put sprinkler systems in and you're gonna, you know, the amount of money that it's gonna cost to get that stuff into buildings may not be feasible, might not even make sense, you know, because of the expense that you're gonna run into. So, I don't have the answer, but I gotta believe that it's not gonna be cheap trying to.
No, I'm talking
you know,
millions.
Band-aid fix some of these buildings that are 50, 60 years old.
I'm just gonna say, we have developed some strategies and facilities. We go in a plan, whether it's roofing or the parking lots, instead of allowing things to go into a state that require a tremendous amount of money, we've been trying to put things on that, you know, the capital plan, but you have to understand, things go awry.
They do.
So I think the strategy is working on some of the things, so you don't have a major layout unexpected because we're doing the things that we need to do, the preventative side of it. but we're still gonna run into those things that are gonna
But-
happen. It's,
And I agree with you. But I'm saying on top of that, because we're going to have to pass a referendum, but we need to be able to do it in a different manner. And like our colleague here said, and over there, we need to be able to get the confidence back from the public. And if we can show a way that we're going to do this in small bits, like 40 million, 40 million, 40 million, so on. That's just an arbitrary number, by the way.
but it's pretty close.
And so, just, they're arbitrary numbers. And passing a 40 million here, and then get that spent and fix what we need to do, whatever we choose to do at that point. And then go out for another one as soon as we can, and so on and so forth, and stack them. It will take about 10 years to do, but you can do it that way, and I think you'll have the public support.
So what type of, just for clarity,
Capital.
a capital?
I'm comfortable with referendum after referendum after referendum. You get referendum to death.
I
And then
understand.
put the operational ones in between there sometime.
I think this is just mind's eye, and I've heard it, and we have to kind of think it through. We say they. No, it's we. I think that's part of the bridge. That it has to be we. We have that's what it is. We're taxpayers. We're part of this community.
Right.
But somehow it's like they. Well,
It's us.
it's us. And I think that's just psychologically that just struck a chord with me, because I was just listening, and it was like they, the community, or they. When I think we have to. That's part of the bridge, because I think that's what's happening. There's a barrier. The community doesn't feel as though we're part of the community. That's my feel.
The methodology, I think you're onto something here. So, Patty, as you mentioned, started in 21 of the 25 group of people. I called all of them, they came in. So the next iteration was, let's just now take it to the community. And that's what we did. Rather than a siloed piece of 25, we had the 4 community meetings. They were actually far better attended than the first round of 21. Now let's talk about us. Is it time now for you as a board, you lead the whole thing? I mean, is that the us that it's going to be? Is that the unified front that you now need to bridge forward on, whether it's a large number, incremental referendums? I would say you have to pay $40 million back, and you're not going to get done in 5 years. So you're looking at probably a 60-year plan
Yeah.
for $40 million.
Yeah.
So that you either go big or
Well, it was
Or-
an
yeah.
arbitrary number.
because the last small we did is for HVACs in 2016, but I do like what you said, Teresa, because you're getting a bond cycle going and you're coming off, so that hit is not there. 30 years of nothing is a hit, but I do want to go back to bridging forward. I really thoroughly enjoyed the process over the last 5 years, because I see exactly what's needed, and it's great. It came out the way it did. Board of Education, running. 7 of them, all at once, on those meetings. Talk to your community, saying we need this. We'll start talking to the city on this next item too. You know, there's some other things to do, because at the end of the day, you're going to need a strategic plan for about the next 100 years, and that may involve where your future buildings are going to go. And I think you might be able to do that. So I'll get off my soapbox.
No, you're good.
No.
Well,
and
well, like you said a little bit, and that's what Joe's been saying to us for this whole thing too, is he needs some direction, you know, going forward too, because, and we've talked about this in and out of facilities, is, you know, how many cans can we kick down the road? And like he said, I don't know what to bring to you anymore. You know, are we gonna put any money in the Miller? Are we gonna put any money into, you know, we just decided we're gonna put a good chunk of money into the middle school, because that's probably gonna be there for a while.
Right.
You know, I mean, so that's what we just did. You know, what does Tim's look like? You know, what does the West High School wing look like? You know, that's what I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, how do we get there? How do we get to that? How do we restart?
I have a question, comment. Do you want to go first, Greg?
Oh,
I don't want to interrupt you. So I like the idea of the board. I didn't know we could do field
Yeah.
field trips, I think of them as field trips, like to go to the different schools as a board during like meetings and walking through. I was not on the board during that time. I don't know how many of you guys were on the board.
I came on and like partway through
Okay.
with the first one.
So like I know Warren's inside and out because my kids go there. I've done tours at the high school, but there's buildings that I have not done like complete walkthroughs of. So I don't know. I think that would be a good idea. But I do think that, and I think when we say they, not necessarily they as in like us versus the taxpayers or the community, those that are maybe not on the board, but all of us, I think to restore that trust, I think we can get referendums passed. I don't think that's the issue. I think we need to show, and by them, like show all of everyone, the community, thank you, right? Like, right, but I mean like, because the community doesn't sit in on these meetings necessarily all the time. So I guess that's where I'm thinking those that are not at the meetings to know what we're talking about, to restore that trust, to show that we're doing it responsibly, not that we didn't before, but I think it just that maybe was, again, that miscommunication, that misunderstanding, that whatever, to be more, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, like more inclusive, more transparent, I guess. Like I know we tried to be transparent, that was a huge talking point of what we were talking about, but maybe we didn't do it in enough ways to reach everyone to how they understand things.
What a big issue that I had heard was the numbers, 177 million. What does that entail? What is exactly, how much is exactly going to the junior high? How much exactly is going to the elementary? How much is going to the high school to be built? How much is going to the property? How much, a better breakdown, I think, is what needed to be.
That was presented exactly at all four.
Yeah,
All
that was
that's
on
exactly
their
what we did.
operational.
And that's exactly what we did at all those meetings.
Right.
Yes, it is.
But maybe we need to personalize it, and again, in my mind's eye, I'm saying, okay, it's a great idea, tour, you know, point it out, each one bring one. Somebody in the community, and have something, and personalize it, and each one of us bring one or two people.
Right.
Or is that overwhelming? I don't know. But we all have people that we can connect with and let people be part of the process. I just remember on the one in, the board didn't make the presentation of accepting. I remember Dwayne Chapman, Cynthia Erdman presented. It wasn't the board. They presented, you know. I'm just trying to find ways, we've got to bridge this. And we can't just say, well, it is what it is. No, I think there are ways. I think there are ways we can do it. It's gonna require some work because it's, rebuilding a bridge is tough.
So you're envisioning, let's say for example, and I'm just maybe I'm wrong, but like say for example what we basically just did with Joe the last 4 months, you know, whatever it's been. Are we looking at doing that the next 6 months, where but instead of seeing it on the screen, we're going to see it in person.
That's right.
Meaning like Monday tonight's an academy meeting. So instead of being here, I don't know how legally all that works with the walking whatever. Can we just say we're going to meet at 6 at Tam's? We're going to spend a half an hour there, and then we're going to go to.
Or we're all going to bring people. Or can we just do a board retreat and then we can do it?
I have no idea the legalities of it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I like the idea of
We have
us
meetings
all-
wherever we want.
You can have meetings
Great.
wherever you want, you notice them, and I think I'll lean in on the transparency piece. The only way this board can be transparent is when you're one unit. So set the meetings when you want them. You'll either have people show up like we have tonight, or you'll get even more. So I think you just go for it. That is the act of transparency right there. That is the act of communication. You're doing it right there. We can't make transparency communication break down into, well, I just don't like the decision that you made. That's your decision. So I would say reinvest that time. Like, I started out in 2020, that was my first meeting at Oakdale. I'd never been there before. And so reinvest that time, and I think that's where you get your leadership combined, your administrative team as a support network rather than the face and the point person. Because that'll be the third iteration of going out on what I think you all do see as significant need in your buildings that you are elected to take care of.
What are we, 10?
13. 13.
Well, okay, I guess I didn't count this, I didn't count district office. I should have.
So
I missed something else.
there's 11 plus building the bus garage
And the bus drive.
and the district office.
So, okay, yeah. So what realistically, how could we realistically pull that off? Like if we start doing our academies, would we realistically do a road trip to 2 or 3 a night?
Yeah.
Where we could go to, let's say, camp and do, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud, I don't know.
Can we notice meetings that way?
That's what I don't know.
I don't think you can notice, well, we moved one meeting because the Title IX meeting started here.
I mean, otherwise you're looking at a year.
So that could be done over a year, depending
Right.
on when you would want to go back to referendum. You couldn't do anything until spring 26 anyway, so.
Can we do like, not just board academy meetings?
Can you do a
board-
board,
Like
a
special
board
meeting in
retreat?
between?
Just, you guys could have 4 meetings a week if you wanted to, but I would say 3.
I'm good with.
Well, maybe,
I'm good with two
well,
of
maybe
one.
you're onto something. If we could call it
special
like a board tour, a board retreat, a board or something, where we would literally do, I don't know, we could do 4 in a night,
Yeah,
and then we get them all done in
And
basically
then
3
that way,
nights.
that's all we're focusing on. We're not trying to like fit all the other agenda items. Like we're just focused on the building.
Exactly how they'd be noticed.
I'm just wondering, that can get lengthy and cumbersome. I was just wondering, if we look at our greatest needs, start there. And have that be where we bring a contingent, and I still say this, it's okay, we advertise events, but I think as boards, we each should invite someone that we know to be a part of that, and then the rest of the public, because it'll be a notice for a meeting, and whoever shows up, but at least we know that we're engaging some people personally. There's something about that, I don't know.
And legal, because when you said, our greatest need is ISAC, which is, and I heard 3 different ones over here.
That's what we'll have to
That's
conclude, right?
part of the,
Because we can't go,
so are the high school CTE needs that our kids will not get what other high school kids are getting more important than the building that our Montessori kids are in? Or is that more important than the?
you
things we're
can't make it
worried about?
empirical because it's all relative to that.
you have
What
no
you say, but we
family
have to
and,
do something as a group,
lemon wire
just
that
conclude
just
and say, this is our starting,
need
That's
something.
our next sentence.
starting point.
I like the idea of bringing them into and bringing engagement. I think that's, I really like that idea. Because I think that's how we're gonna restore trust, and they're gonna feel a part of it, and that's how we're gonna.
Okay, and I agree 100%. But so what do you? Okay, so now what are we suggesting? We're bringing in, let's say bringing in 1 person, and now are we touring 3 a night, 4 a night, 1 a night?
Or are you just talking, Spencer, about just even being here?
Or just being this meeting?
Well, no, because I think there's something about the physical part of it. Once you step in that building, and I know we can't do the other because I saw that at the last, but they did a time-lapse video of a lunchroom. It was nuts. And people were saying, whoa. See, because we don't understand it, because we can tour an empty building, it's not gonna give us what we need. We have to find a way so that people can see it for themselves that, and you can point things out. This is where a teacher does her IEP behind the scene. You know what I mean? Something that really is, that's what's prompting all this back in 2017, that we don't have space, we're overlapping, we're doing some things that are not real good for our students.
And so are you saying, just to clarify that point,
I don't know what I'm
I think it's accurate,
That's what I do.
And we really can't bring in 25 community members into school, so how do we do that?
I like the idea of us going and then having a video, this is the lunchroom on Tuesday. I mean, it wouldn't have to be very long, 10 minutes. Just
You have to
show
get permission
places.
from, I mean, any legal,
There are some permission things we have to look at, there are some schools that.
Sue, I'm sorry, did you say in session? I didn't hear what you said. In session or?
No, not when school's in
Okay,
session,
okay.
but going after hours.
Yeah, okay,
But
okay.
have the video of what it's like in the hallway, what it's like at lunchroom, this is what
I see.
staff
Yeah.
are looking
Yep.
at. And the reason I like that too is because, and if we invite somebody, we should invite someone that doesn't have children in the district.
Yeah.
Because that's a big part of your voting piece, and they're so far removed from school and what's going on in school. And if they go there and say, this looks like it did when I went to school here 40 years ago, it hasn't changed.
Who's gonna bring you on?
I am.
There you go.
Bring the what?
Vaughn.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I am.
I
Here's
am.
mine.
No, I'm inviting Vaughn.
Here's my thought, that we bring 7 people in from the community, that is gonna get us nothing. We gotta get more people to really get in and see those buildings. I mean, we can bring 7 people that we know,
Yeah.
and we're gonna believe that they believe that we want a referendum, but that's not gonna get us the votes we need. We've gotta get the people into those buildings and see how bad they really are. And then,
So we start holding town halls at all of them.
I don't know what the answer, but maybe we do have a meeting there.
Yeah.
We have
Then you can have
a
each
tour
one
of
of our
anybody that wants
meetings
to
there.
come and tour the buildings and see them, you know.
Yeah.
So again, I'm,
Maybe it's gonna take
I
a
agree
year,
with you
but we
100,
want
I agree
this
with
to
you
go.
100.
We gotta do it so we get people to really understand what we're saying,
and I agree with you 100%.
you know.
I'm just trying to figure out how are we gonna accomplish this without all of us having 16 meetings a month? You know, that's what I don't know. I mean,
Have our board meetings at a different site every.
okay, again, so then you're gonna get one every month, and if we have 13 to do, we're not even gonna get through them in a year.
No, yeah.
And then we're potentially gonna have board changeover, and and then you're getting all mismatched again, and now we're 10 years down the road from when we started. And I'm not, I mean, so that's why I'm just trying to figure out how. I agree with you 100% that we gotta try to get some people in the, A, are people gonna show up? And B, how can we do this in a reasonable timeline? That's what I don't know.
I want to give you a perspective on timeline too. So however, whatever you decide to do, or however the decision is, keep in mind, if you're gonna do video, we have 20 school days left, so that would have to be done in those days, which I get it.
But they're really wild right now, so.
Yeah.
And that would be good.
So even, let's say you wait till the fall, or you don't, let's say you don't wait till the fall, and you start right now, and you do 2 months, and you get done, we're at November 25. You have to make a decision by January 26th if you're going to referendum in April 26th. And if you don't go in April 26th, you can't go in April 27th to be operational. How does everyone feel about
I'm okay with it.
Like,
That's,
like a
Yeah.
half a day, like a, I mean, I could take a day off work.
okay, so
I
what
would
do you,
be
what do you
good with
think?
a retreat.
So what are you suggesting though? And I'm
Well,
like a one day?
explain to what do you mean by retreat?
Okay, a retreat it's a misnomer. It's just a meeting. Because I saw that you had a board retreat, I don't know, 2021, I think it was. And just gathering in one spot, looking at, doing what Joe did was a few of us, and having him take us around and understanding that that's what's going to happen throughout and noticing it, and then you're done. You spend a whole day going through 3 buildings, and then you get another retreat, and you spend the whole day going through 3 buildings, because that's about all I can walk through at one time, and so on and so forth. And then, so it's kind of a board retreat. We're discussing these buildings, and our whole focus is solely on that, and coming up with some solutions as we're trying to figure out, because I know, you aren't gonna be able to fix all the solutions in one referendum. It's not gonna happen.
So one idea, I don't mean to cut people off, and everybody will have their chance. One idea I just had when you're talking about, so what if we did this type of a thing in the near future this summer, where we did a couple half a days, try to get into most of the buildings, just us.
Yeah.
Then we will identify what we believe needs to be now. You know, whether it's Miller or LaGrange or Tams or whatever else. Then we can do our town halls in those meetings. I don't think we need to do town hall in every single building in the district if we're not gonna touch those buildings in the district for 10 years. If that makes sense?
Yes.
So if we decide, let's I'm just gonna pick one out. Let's decide Tams, we all say Tams is the worst. Okay, and again, theoretically. Okay? So then let's do that. Let's have a meeting there that night, whether it's a regular meeting, a special town hall, you know, instead of our academy, at Tams, and then say everybody come and look. I mean, like I said, I don't think we need all the community to come to 13 buildings in the next 3 months. You know, if we're not going to do hardly anything at LaGrange or Warrens, you know, or whatever. I don't know. Thought.
I was gonna suggest narrow it down to 3.
Oops, sorry.
3 that we, in our, I'm kind of going, that we, okay, I'll be honest. I like the referendum because I want to get rid of some of those old buildings that are dragging us down and are just not efficient in the sense of the facilities, and they're not efficient for education. So pick 3 and just do it there. And figure these are the ones that we maybe want to kind of eliminate. Whether it's middle school, Miller, Lemonwire, whatever. Just do a few of them. And do it that way.
I was gonna say, Joe, can I ask you? I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Sure.
If you had to choose,
Fine here.
if you had to choose 3 of the, I'm gonna say quote unquote worst buildings, or the buildings most in need, the oldest, what would those 3 be?
Before you
That-
answer, qualify needs, educational needs, physical.
That's what I was just thinking
Well, I
too.
think they all go together.
Well, I think there's a difference between Tams and Miller.
There's an infrastructure and, infrastructure
That's making them
need,
onto something.
an educational need, and, a structure,
Let's say
instructional need.
safety, because obviously if kids aren't safe,
And then
then the
safety.
educational and everything else is out the window. So.
Well, based on everything you just said, I would give you a different answer to every question. Like, and I'm not trying to pick apart your question either, though. Like, the reason I'm saying that is so the biggest need that is coming down is going to be all the air conditioning that's for 2008. So for LaGrange, Lemonwire, Miller, and a small part of Warren. So all of those things are done in 2008. They're all residential air conditioners. If you've ever replaced an air conditioner in your house, it's every 15, 20 years.
20 years.
So we're there, right? So that is that. If you said, what is your biggest need? I'm going to tell you that air conditioning is coming quickly down the line, where if you don't pick a building and replace some of them, it's going to, you know, the snowball's getting bigger on that end. And then the same thing when it comes to some of the sanitary plumbing, which we kind of discussed at one of the other meetings, was cast iron, Lemonwire, Miller. Those are the big ones. But then you also said age. So by definition, the middle school and Warrens are the oldest, but based on educational needs and what Tim said from Warrens, like space-wise and educational-wise, he's pretty good at most of his buildings when it comes to the education side. And I'm not trying to parse words, but I think that was my recollection of what he said. So that doesn't go to say that he also has cast iron and other things in those buildings, but they don't necessarily rise to the alarming level that Lemonwire and Miller are, and some of that's based on use. So, you know, Miller has whatever 250 kids, and Warrens and Wyville, I don't know, are 150 maybe or something. I don't know the numbers, but so I'm not trying to pick apart your question, but it does change given the context and how you change it or ask it. So if you were to pick 3, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question enough for me to pick three, or how you want me to necessarily phrase that.
I
based
guess
on
I
that.
would think, because like space-wise, I mean, obviously we're gonna need more space, but if, like, I don't know, I guess I'm thinking as a mom, like if the boiler's gonna blow up or something, and like it's like safety-wise or whatever.
So,
Ms. Rice, if I can step it, to be direct with your question,
Yes.
my pick, because for instructional, I've walked all of the buildings with Joe and had long conversations with him. Instructional, safety, to answer that question, and I can't remember the other word I used, infrastructure needs. My top would be Miller, then Lemon Wire, and then Tams. And Tams is almost on top of Miller in some respects because there's holes in the. So Tams is.
So,
I'll stop that sentence. But go ahead.
so why wouldn't we look at an elementary,
Build.
well, like elementary building, like the elementary? Because then maybe we can take a building and make Tams better off. I mean, we can't do baby steps. It's gonna take forever. We gotta look at, do we do a big complex, an elementary complex somewhere?
You could.
Get that going. We've got space needs for band at the high school. Maybe we could take one of the buildings and they could have band or something in some of those buildings temporarily till we can get a high school done or whatever it is. But we can't just, okay, we're gonna do Miller. Okay, we're gonna move over here to Lemon Wire. I mean,
So maybe let's start there. Should we try to get set up that we go visit Miller and Lemon Wire and Tams, I suppose, the three of them, in a half a day that we can all agree to?
I'm all for it.
And us all go take a look at it. And then if we already decide this is it, guys, and we need to fix it, this is it, then maybe that's where we're already at, Rick. I don't know, but.
Yeah, but we have a list of Miller, we have a list of Tams, we have a list of Lemon Wire.
So I guess let's see it.
But I think that would.
I'm sorry, Rick, I cut you off.
No, I agree with you, because, I mean, it still blows my mind that there's classrooms down in the basement. Because when I was in Miller, and I'm gonna be out 45 years, I mean, that classroom is still there. It just blows my, I guess there's an entrance now that you can get out or whatever, but you know, we were down there back then, you know, and it's just, it blows my mind.
Will this be for the board's sake? Or
That's again, that's where we are.
I think that okay, this is my personal opinion, and you guys can disagree with it, but I think it would help us be more, I don't want the word unified, but like it would help us get on the same page, because we're not gonna convince
Only us.
only the school board, right? Because we're not going to, if we come at this divided, it's gonna have so much less impact on the community.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
No, it does.
Does everyone
So you're
agree with
suggesting-
that, or
So you're suggesting you're good with
just the school board?
basically
or
us
just the board?
9 or whatever.
Careful,
10.
because you have to notice when you're there, so you remember, anybody can come show up to the meeting.
Right.
It's fine, I mean, I think the purpose of the meeting would be for us to get.
We have to notice the purpose of the meeting, yes.
That's fine.
And if the public shows up where we are, then they can sit and listen to us deliberate.
Because it's gonna be an opportunity for them to see exactly what we're seeing.
Right.
Okay.
So I'll find a pathway to get a half day in the 3 buildings. I'll just have to ask how to notice that, because there'll be transition.
Okay.
Or do you want to just figure out a way till summer?
Well, that's just to say, so what are we looking at? What are people suggesting looking at? I mean, today's obviously May 5th.
so everybody here is able to do a half day during the week, or talking at night, or talking in the weekend. If you can actually see it as kids, then you get this true picture of what that school is like.
I can adjust my schedule.
Then you have 20 schools to figure it out.
So you're suggesting you'd like us kind of, well, you have to public now notice it. So how does that work? Public noticing people into fully functional. What if 50 people show up?
There's some things I'll have to ask about, because you'll be walking around in a quorum discussing business Will and Matt, will anybody wanna know what you were talking about? So, but I have to take the safety and security of the students in mind, right? Absolute, that's my absolute. So, everybody has to be background checked if they wanna get in my. That's your policy.
Yeah, we just
I like
passed
that
that one.
policy for the sake of my children.
So you have to be very careful, because I don't want you to get hit with a open meetings violation. You don't want to get hit with that, I mean.
Do you think this is a possibility that if we notice a meeting and say, if you would like to attend as a community member, you have to let somebody know by X time so that we can be background checked because we'll be students will be present?
That's authority as well.
Could we-
Don't background check.
Okay, again, I'm just trying to think outside the box.
Can you
Could we
just,
split up?
can you ask
We
the
go through
attorney if
2-2?
he has any ideas?
With a person?
Ask our attorney
Why not?
if he has any ideas.
Yeah, it's on it.
Could we do it after school and then just do the video during, showing what happens at lunch or in the hallways and, or something, and do it that way? I mean, even after
Sorry, you
school.
heard me sigh, 'cause I'm like, we have to create the video then, which we can get done.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
So,
Everybody lean forward, Joe.
so not that I'm trying to skirt the open meeting thing, but what if you did one per day to walk through, like the middle school lunchroom, where you don't have a quorum? I mean, I don't know, like, does the background have to be all together, or
It would
not?
be
Yeah.
probably
Each one of
more-
us has
and then you do a 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock meeting as a whole. You can go over what you saw. I don't know. I'm just I don't know how to get into a building without violating that rule, but.
Like, just audio record the walkthrough?
No,
not
not
even.
But if we went after school, the remnants of all the kids are still there. I mean, there's stuff laying around, I've seen it.
It just won't be the same.
Yeah, it's not the same, but I don't know.
So, can we just, for right now, can we just wait until, like, can you just let us know what, like,
Get you
we
information.
can rack our brains and see how we can make it.
There's a good bet another district has tried something along those lines. I just want to make sure that it is an absolute quorum and we are discussing business. So I would have to say, oh yeah, come on in, but I got 450 kids too. So yeah, there's a way. Let me get some questions. How would one conduct a meeting at a school with kids? I'll ask that. Or your safest, because we've already done it. We've met at different buildings just after hours. But I get, we'd like to see the real, what's happening during that time. But let me just try to get some answers.
You might find that having it called a board retreat versus an academy or a business meeting might help in that.
Maybe, you still have to notice. And you
Yeah, you have to know, yeah.
Tomah was sued
Because,
and lost because they held a meeting and nobody knew really what it was.
so how, when we go off to conference, you notice
But you're not discussing business. You're absolutely going to discuss business when
Yeah.
you're going in.
And we can't split up. Like 2 people go with Joe, 2 people go with Mike, 2 people go with Michelle. And
I should ask about that, how we could design it where but then you're not unified.
I know we're not unified on the spot.
Yeah.
I might not.
I'll ask some questions. What's a good way to get some work done?
Worst comes to worst, we adjust.
Would also be aware that you're a public body.
Okay.
Yeah, there might be a way. Conference, yeah, that's a little different. The city meeting is a little different. But yeah, I'm just gonna ask.
So only 20 days of school left. Our next full board meeting isn't for 2 weeks, which will eliminate 9 more of those days. So we're down to 10 days roughly. After the meeting, everything, we're gonna try to do something via email or phone calls.
I'll go ahead and just email you all and give you your availability. I'll give you here's how you can do this. Here are some sample dates and times. We'll say I can make it or not. Rock and roll.
And for now, we looking at those 3. I mean, we're looking at Miller, Lemwire. What do you want? And Cams as a starting point. Like ASAP.
Where the summer sessions at?
Lemonwire will have some.
So that summer session.
Lemonwire will have some is instead of
Oh,
22.
for
Don't understand, so you
I
have
think
to,
you put that one off till June.
that's what I was saying.
I thought you were just, are we doing all three of those for the?
I thought we were doing them
Oh,
all.
you do it on one day?
That's
Oh,
sorry,
okay,
sorry.
okay. No, I
I
didn't.
didn't get that.
I didn't, sorry.
That's just thinking like half
I
a day,
missed
so
that.
we were at basically at every school for an hour.
Right.
And then you have transition driving or whatever, so basically, yeah, you know, let's be in the school at 8:30 and that's what I was thinking.
That's good. I
I'll
always
try to
understood
make
that.
Oh, that's true.
Get bands.
Yeah, we could manage it.
I thought you drive one of those big yellow buses.
I can get the mini bus.
Ooh.
Get the
Okay,
white bus.
Drive that one
everybody's pretty comfortable, everybody okay? Alright,
It sounds like a starting point.
fantastic discussion, there's a ton of information, again, Michelle, I know did a vast majority of that, you know, with everybody, so thank you for throwing that all together. And it's a culmination of all of us and way beyond us, so, okay. Okay, last thing, or whatever on the agenda tonight is a board discussion of the options regarding land offer to purchase, so again, there's no action tonight. How do we want to preface this? Just, Kurt, you gonna
Yeah,
talk?
so
Okay.
let's kick this one off. We've gone through the steps. I want to thank Kurt Legalhouse for being here tonight. Around March 6th, we were made aware that planning and zoning was meeting and the city, and so things started to move forward on the city side of things. So that brings us to our meeting tonight, the last city council meeting. All the rezoning was not approved, the annexation was tabled, and so that presents some options for the board to discuss. There's no action tonight, but rather just discussion of options. Kurt's got some background on that for you, and then continuing dialogue. So, Mr. Chairman, is it okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Kurt
Great.
can go ahead, yep.
Excellent. I'll give you a little background on that offer to purchase contract for the land, and then lead up to the city meeting, and then talk about what are some options going forward, right? So back in October 14th is when the contract got put in place with that offer to purchase. That following week, there was electorate approval, which passed. That was one of the contingencies on that offer to purchase. Another contingency on that offer to purchase was for board approval based on off of that offer. So that happened in January. So that kept the ball rolling as far as moving forward with the land purchase. Then the next category of contingencies that were in that offer to purchase was all categorized under the investigation period. So once board made approval to move forward in December, some of the items that were slated between January 1st and June of 2025, which was the duration of the investigation period. One of them was surveying, soil testing, traffic study. All that stuff was done because the next was at least partially done, which allowed the district then to put an application into the city for comprehensive plan update, which is the predecessor to the rezoning, and then annexation. So, so that survey and soil testing, all that went fine. The phase 1 portion of the traffic study went well. That all got submitted to the city to have them consider the comprehensive plan amendment. So that first meeting was early March with the Plan Commission. That passed, and then went to Common Council on April 15th. And so the two items that were on the agenda for that Common Council meeting for April 15th was one, comprehensive plan amendment. So basically the land that the district has under contract in the future land use plan was residential. So that first step was for the city to say it's appropriate to change that land use plan to be institutional for a school type zoning. So that did not pass at the April meeting from Common Council. So that got voted down 3-8. And so that next agenda item, which was the annexation portion, which needed 5 of the 8 to approve that. That got tabled since they kind of go hand in hand, so that got tabled, and so now the district's at a point where a decision has to be made as far as, do you keep moving down the path of purchasing this land, even though the contingency that was set forth was not satisfied and does not look like it's going to be satisfied based on the April vote. The district has the option to waive the contingency, but you don't have city support right now with the comprehensive plan amendment. So right now where it sits, that amendment was voted down, but the annexation was tabled, and the city is waiting for the district to let them know if the desire is to put it on the next plan or next common council meeting to vote on the annexation, or if the district wants to withdraw it, given that the comprehensive plan amendment did not pass. So, yeah, go ahead.
I thought it was that the owner of the property had to make that option to withdraw their petition for annexation.
Yeah, so the application that got submitted, the district put it together, had the owner sign it. One of the contingencies on offer of purchase, and the seller was only interested is if the district was buying, the owner of the property was if the district was buying, and the annexation could only, one of the stipulations in the annexation, in the application that the district put together, that was signed by the owner, and the specific request that they had is that annexation was only effective once the district actually transferred the property purchase. So, so yeah, the application, it was a joint sign, the district signed it, and also the seller signed it as well. In talking with the seller's not interested in continuing that application without the district supporting it.
So, okay, so the seller is not interested in selling the property without the district buying the properties. Is that what you're saying?
Not interested in having it annexed
Not
without
interested
the
in
district
without the district.
purchasing it, right?
Okay. I want to make sure I have that verbiage correct.
Yep. Yeah. So if you look at the application that was submitted for annexation, one of the lines in there is only to be effective if transfer of property goes to the district, is how it was worded in there. So as I kind of just brainstorm and just throw out 3 options to consider, there may be more, but the 3 options that come to mind that seem to be most logical for consideration. The first one is the offer to purchase contract has a contingency in there that if the city doesn't approve, the district can get out of the contract, right? So basically exercising the contingency option to void the offer to purchase, and so what that would look like is the district would officially write a cancellation to the offer to purchase, and the contract would be void. There's no more obligations from the district or from the seller's standpoint. So that's one option. We can just decide to cancel that contract. Another option that if the district desires this, it would be a question to the seller. Another option would be, seller, would you entertain the idea of extending the contract? So right now the contract expires in August of 2025, and so all our contingencies have to be cleared by the end of June, and then closing by August of 2025. So the question on the strategy would be, if the district wants to ask the seller, would you extend the contract? And then with the discussion that happened prior to this, of the district's putting together a plan of what is the new strategy for facilities. And so obviously the advantage, if the seller agrees that if the strategy is to, you know, for example, take Lemon Well or Miller and Tams and say we want to build a new elementary school with that, right? Then you have a piece of land that you can build that new elementary school, right? So that option is to hear if that's an idea that the board wants, that it's something that the seller would have to agree to, right? And I would expect the seller would want to know, why would I do that, right? So they want some type of reassurance that if I extend it, there's a good path to closing. So that would be an ask, but we don't know what he would say, but that would be a strategy. Number two would be to ask to extend the contract to kind of get the board and the school district a little more time to figure out what the strategy could be over the next 9 to 12 months. And I just use 9 to 12 months as a number, whether that's appropriate or longer or shorter, but that's a thought. And then the third option to consider is you have the contingency in there that the city has to approve it. It doesn't mean you can't waive it. So you could waive the contingency and still buy the property. You still have the hurdle of the city at some point has to approve it, or you keep it in the town and the town has to approve it, right? So that would that strategy would be, okay, buy the land and we'll figure out how we would use it, or if the district doesn't find a use for it, you know, if you recall that offer to purchase does have a deed restriction on it, meaning in the next 10 years it can only be used for school property or school use. So if you use that strategy of we're just going to buy it and figure it out, the approvals as the strategy comes together, and a strategy doesn't come together, a referendum doesn't get passed, you know, the district could sell at any point, but the value of that property gets maintained at levels of market after 10 years, because that deed restrictions currently would be on that property. So that's the third option. So just thought those are the ones that I thought is worth talking about, I guess. And if you have others or other thoughts, certainly it'd be a good time just to kind of talk and brainstorm is kind of the hope, I guess, as we outline some of the options and paths forward.
Can you explain that last one a little bit further of board and the deed restriction? Is it restricted just to farming, or is it restricted? I know you can't build a housing development there, and you can't sell it off in parcels for at least 9 years. At the 10th year you can, but so what would happen with that? What does that look like, or what's the cost? Or
yeah, so when we were negotiating with the seller to buy the land, a while back or years before any of us, the district purchased some land from this family, and evidently that land was for school buildings, and I don't know the details of it, but evidently it didn't get used for a school building. Not this specific piece of land, another piece of land that this owner had. So having that background, and the grandfather having been through that, the people that are involved, the sellers that are involved, asked that if they're going to sell the property, they want to make sure it's being used for school use. And so the solution for that, and what was put in the contract, was to say if the district buys this property, it has to be used for school use, right? So we came up with an agreeable duration of over the next 10 years. So basically a deed restriction sets forth on the title of the property saying the only thing that you can use that property for is for school use, and after that 10 years would expire, then that deed restriction would go away. So the reason it was put in there was to ensure to the sellers that the district intent was going to use it for school use. The 10 years expires. When the 10 years expires, if the district did not build on it or did not use it, the district at that point could then sell it and use it for residential or any other use beyond school use.
And so, while it's in that deed restriction, we wouldn't have to pay taxes on it, correct?
Correct, yeah. And that's regardless of whether it's a deed restriction or not. So even when that 10 years would expire, because you're a school district nonprofit, there would be no property taxes that would be owed by the district.
And so we would still have to maintain that property, or would we be allowed to have a farmer continue to farm?
You could have a farmer continue to farm.
And would we get anything from that, the rental?
And that'd be all between the lease agreement between the district and the farmer. The current farmer that farms that is interested in continuing to farm it, and so yes, I would, and they're currently paying a rental or lease fee. So I would expect that would be a very marketable piece of land that the district would continue to look at rent, but it would be an agreement directly between the district and the farmer.
In bigger pictures, I just have to say it, we assume liability then, and it's not, we become landlords. Right. So that's something, it's not just a easy liability.
Is all of the property out of that acreage, is that all in the town of Tomah? Or is some of it in the city?
Some of it's in the city,
Okay.
yep. So the portion that is on the south end is in the town, and then the north end is the city.
Okay.
Being at the meeting that night, I kind of had the feeling that the city was interested in that property.
This city wants to see going through those meetings and discussions. The city wants to see more residential development, affordable type residential development, and so they were very, intrigued on the portion of if, the original plan, if the district builds a building and closes other buildings, they would like some reassurance that if you're closing another building, that potentially could become residential land or redeveloped into apartments or something along those lines. The city wants that. Again, that's the seller wasn't interested in selling until the district approached them.
Sell it to the city, but the city, I mean, they were very high strung on that piece of land for residential. But I wasn't about to stand up and say anything. But
yeah, one of the council members did speak up and made the point, and I agreed with them that you have somebody that's interested in making it a school now, and you have no developers. That could be 20 years before a developer, whether the seller wants to sell to a developer or a developer comes, right? That could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, right? So, yes.
It is on, from what I understand, from what I've read, it is on their strategic plan of 2048 to have that bought and sold off into parcels for tax revenue. And that is their intent. And then they had a big deliberation, I don't know if you were still there, afterwards, concerning, they had just done in October, finished their, I think it's October, I might misspeak on the month, but they had just finished their strategic plan of 2048, and that particular section of this of property was directly in there as part of their plan of what they wanted to do. So that's what I understood from the meeting. So
Nice to make a plan when they
And
haven't
again, it's a
even
dream.
they hadn't even contacted the seller or the
no,
landowner, so.
they probably haven't contacted anybody
Yeah.
on any of it, but that's what they're looking at across the.
And every city is required to put a comprehensive plan together. It's just smart planning, right? You'll never see, I shouldn't say never, very rarely will you see a city put a comprehensive plan of this is where a school site should go, right? Because they're only using information of what they know, unless they know a school is looking to add a site, and they do their updates. You won't see institutional zoning. So it's common practice when we go and work with schools that are looking to buy land. It's common practice that the first step is to amend the comprehensive plan, and then 2, amend the zoning, so it's, like I said, you rarely would you see that they are setting aside land for a school district, in an area of town, unless if there's been discussions ahead of that, so. But every 10 years, those comprehensive plans, the cities around the state, will update comprehensive plans.
Any questions or comments for Kurt directly? So,
May 19 would be a,
right, so as we need to discuss, Greg, I'm sorry, Dr. Hanson, go ahead.
oh, no, go ahead, I just wanted to see, with the pause here, the board be ready to May 19.
Yeah, then that's I was gonna say the same thing basically. So I mean the basic idea was, you know, we were given the authority earlier, but this is developed into a bigger item, you know, now that some things have transpired, so that's why I recommended, or I said we needed to have this come back to the full board discussion. No action tonight, but we will probably need to, or we do need to, give some direction in 2 weeks. So we need to kind of discuss this a little bit about what we think and what a possible action item for the meeting in 2 weeks would be.
That's like number one. It's not gonna get resolved.
Number 1 being, I'm sorry,
The
what was it?
option number one.
Which was basically to
So
bow out.
just the contingencies weren't fulfilled, so just, that's my personal.
Question, and I've heard comments both ways. The question was, how can you build, when we first did this, put out the referendum, it was kind of on the back burner of the land purchase. That was kind of behind the scenes a little bit because the seller didn't want all of that being public. And the question was presented, how can you build a school when you don't have land? Okay, legitimate question, but I've also heard it the other way. What if you buy land and we won't build a school? So, how do you resolve that?
You knock down a building and you build up according to your needs. That's how you resolve that issue. If you don't have the land, you already have land that buildings are on, you knock one of them down and build according to the need of that. And I'd start with an elementary.
Yeah, what do you do with those students in the meantime?
Let's see, how long will that take, and then what's the interim?
Capacity levels already there, we can't.
And
Yeah,
I don't even know if you can build on them on the property.
You could do that, or you build onto a junior high, and after you get that done, then you move a section of elementary in there, and then you, so on and so, I don't know how many 5th graders we have, but, how many?
About 200.
So you build for 250 onto a junior high, then you house the elementary in there, and then so on and so forth, and you just kind of do this shuffle thing. I've seen it done with 1,000 kids.
We do have the sign-up fees as a possibility, huh?
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, and the whether it's good, bad, and different, I honestly don't know. If you truly would do an elementary there, you're gonna have your 2 elementary schools very close to each other. I don't know if that's good or bad, I really don't. You know, because you're gonna have LaGrange and New Steinhoff School, you know.
I think some ideas though for the ranges in pre-K through Montessori.
Right.
It's still on the table, things to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's probably our goal.
You know, if we can get an elementary, we can fix other buildings by just,
Can't rebuild on none there.
and they get their gym, they
Build
get their things that they will fund, or
Millers,
you
man.
know.
Lacrosse had a
It's
nice.
soccer
group.
field, soccer field,
It's
soccer
got
field,
ice
soccer fields.
on
So before all of our time, that was kind of the purpose, was let's buy, it was exactly this, but it went through it blazed right through the city at that point.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah.
Right.
He said Steinhoff School, and I was like.
I just said that, I just made up a story of the new school being called that, yeah.
Yeah, the school district bought it because they put a holding pond in, I live over there, so that's, we were waiting for the school. to
So
develop.
we own that,
we own this down south.
Yeah,
We own this
yeah,
down.
it's
I
right
thought
next to
so.
my
And,
neighborhood.
and that was well before all
That was- that
the
was before all
residential
of us.
was in there, that
Yeah.
residential.
Yeah, there were no houses there.
There were
Yeah.
no houses.
And it was this, what we just tried to do with the Bailey property is what the school board at that time did with the Steinoff property before all of us. They said, we're gonna need a new school at some point. And that was, I believe, you were teaching at that time, no? Not even privy. Well, neither was I. This is hearsay for me a little bit, right? Was, yeah. It was a little bit of the same idea. We're gonna need a school eventually. I mean, so this was, how many years ago that the school district bought that? I mean, does anybody know?
Well, it was before 2009, because I'm one of the first houses in there.
Well, that's what was bought, that's why they had.
Yes, it is
Holding
built
pond
on
and everything
I'm
else.
trying to
was
like,
right
I'm trying to
behind it.
picture it in my.
Because I think at that time they already
Maybe
knew
it's right behind my house.
2000.
I know where it's at, I just, I
It's
can't, like,
buildable.
I'm
it's very
trying to
buildable.
picture.
It's basically,
How many acres is it?
how many
It's
would
only
could
about
fit there?
30.
I think a middle school would be too tight.
20.
Yeah, but you could do it.
It would have to be elementary or something
Oh,
like
yeah, that would
that.
help
Right.
with the thing, room.
It's just another option. So, and we can go there.
I think you could, I think you
We can go there all we want down the road, but we kind of just need to decide tonight, so we're not here forever and ever. What we think we want to do with the Bailey property, really. And I know this is part of the discussion, but we just need we need to come up with forming a kind of an action item that we're thinking of doing a board vote on in 2 weeks.
I think the city's gave us our answer.
So you're saying
I-
you're saying bow out. You're saying bow out.
We're not gonna,
Bow out.
we're not gonna
Bow
bring it to the.
out. You guys have an opinion?
Yeah, I think we're between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah,
Yes, I don't know how we move forward if we opted to go beyond that with, I don't think that would be a good idea.
Yeah. Maybe
Sue,
it's not gonna-
you're okay with that then?
What?
Bow
Bow
out,
out.
basically?
I
Okay.
almost have.
So it's not a formal vote. It's, no, wait, nobody.
Discussion.
Don't post this that we're making a formal vote.
Let's discuss.
No, I
So-
don't like having to feel that way, but I don't think it's.
So we'll need an action item in 2 weeks that would read something along the lines of what Kurt said up front as the first one, however you want to word that. That would say that we are, was it releasing? No, that's not the word.
Exercising the contingency clause to
Okay.
There you go.
cancel the offer
To,
purchase.
to cancel, what's that you said?
Yep, exercise the contingency clause and cancel the offer to purchase.
Okay,
What? Maybe we'll donate.
Well, we
so
never.
they held on to this long, I doubt they. Okay, so that'll be an action item, we're not doing anything tonight. So everybody can, when that shows up in the agenda, we can cool our jets and make sure people know we're not being sneaky or nothing else. We're doing the exact opposite. So, pretty good?
Yes.
Good. All right, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Katie?
Second.
You
Second.
can't be the
So,
All in favor?
My
Aye.
birthday is
Aye.
Friday, so I get to make that motion.
That's right, that's a king.
I don't know what other things going on, but we have facilities Monday at district
My
office.
birthday is anniversary.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thanks.
Kurt, thank you for all your time the last few months. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely.